We have class disparities that are unfair. It is true that for certain types of crimes, poor people commit more of those crimes than rich people do. Why? Because of the underlying socioeconomic problems. Obviously, people who are poor and living in poverty may be more inclined to commit certain kinds of crimes because of the circumstances of their lives. And those happen to be the kinds of crimes that in our society we arrest and punish for. Now, there are other kinds of crimes that are committed, white-collar crimes that are committed by people on a larger scale that are not prosecuted as much, that also cause a great deal of harm to a lot of people. Environmental crimes, corporate crimes, financial crimes, etc. But there are decisions made by criminal justice officials about which of those crimes we're going to put more resources into and which ones we're going to punish more.
I tend to like to use the phrase, there are no rich people on death row, which is a sort of summary statement that is woefully general, dangerously general, but aptly represents the fact that there are significant class inequalities. As your class status goes down, the probability of you getting you receiving quality legal representation goes down, and the probability of your participation at all levels of what Gottschalk and others call the carceral state, the way in which from the first manner of street contact, the first manner of discipline within school settings, at every first level of contact, the penal system imposes itself and initiates a level of severe inequality in who is most likely to be impacted by those penal outcomes, those carceral outcomes.
About 70% of people who are accused of crimes that carry potential jail sentences are in the qualification range of 187.5% of poverty and below. There are unfortunately offices in this state that I know there are public defenders who are carrying almost 1,000 new misdemeanors a year. That's an extraordinarily unmanageable caseload. If you break that down, that means that lawyer has about an hour and a half to spend on your case. Poverty and policing and crime are all intermingled in very, very deep ways culturally in America. We police very heavily in poverty areas. As a result, we have higher crime rates in those areas. Is crime really higher in those areas, or are we policing more crime in those areas? I would suggest that we are policing far differently in poverty areas than we police in your middle class neighborhood. You would find it appalling, I believe, in your neighborhood if a police officer drove up to you and wanted to ask you questions, but before doing so patted you down. Every contact I've ever had with the police has always been this very nice, kind, thank you, officer, appreciate your help, very polite, never ever ask me to rifle through my car or if they could pat me down or any of those things. But the vast majority of my clients and the vast majority of people that I've interacted with in very poor areas of our society say that that's just not an uncommon event in their life, to be a passenger in a car that got stopped and get out and pulled out and searched. That it's not uncommon for a police officer to ask somebody to come over and talk to them, but in the process, pat them down. There's a different viewpoint. Now, the police, in their defense, they are working in an area that has very high crime statistics, so they are being more careful about what they're doing. They want to make sure that they're safe, and I get that, and I completely respect that. But again, which one came first? If the police drove through your middle class, upper middle class neighborhood and started doing these same policies, there would be a hue and outcry that would astonish you. There is a hue and outcry in the poor neighborhoods. They simply have no voice that gets any further than the poor neighborhood. And when I say they, that's just the wrong term. They are part of us. And I think there's a fundamental truth to the strength of communities is a measure of how we treat the poorest, how we treat the weakest. I think is the best measure of the strength of a community in a neighborhood. How do we take care of each other? And if we exclude, if we disenfranchise, if we marginalize a significant number of people, it says something very telling about us as a community. It says something very telling about us as people. And so all of the change, all this incremental change that needs to happen to get us back to a balanced justice system, a fair justice system, has got to start in our communities.